Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Roland Spatugan. Welcome. I'm going to give it a few minutes for people to log in and attend our event. In the meantime, what I'd like for you all to do, the ones who are here already, I would like you all to locate your chat feature on Zoom, and I would like for you to tell us where you are watching this event from. If you're coming from Los Angeles, that's great. Just say hello from your particular neighborhood in LA. If you're coming from out of state, that would be cool and amazing. And out of the country, bonus points. That'd be so awesome. So I'm going to start off. I'm just going to say hello from Pasadena. All right. Hello from Chicago. Hello, Barbara from Chicago. Amazing. Thank you for coming. Ian Wright, Beverly Hills via Scotland. Hello. All right. I'm so glad. Hello to everyone here. Thank you for participating in that little hello and introduction there. To Topanga, Ellery, hello. Let's see. I'm just gonna see. I'm just looking for some like exotic locations here. No disrespect to our LA folk. Thank you so much for attending. Um, and from Landgrove, Vermont, the leaves are changing. Oh wow! Thank you for that. That's amazing. Wow, that's 100 degrees here. Thanks for letting us know the leaves are changing in Vermont. Thank you so much for that. Echo Park, how you doing, Britt? Let's see. Hello from New York City, Mary. Hello. All right. Las Vegas. All right. Hello, Chris and Pam. All right. We'll start shortly in a couple minutes here. Thanks for playing. Yo from Philly. Hey, Mikey. uh, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Joe raised our temperature there, Helene. It's only 99 degrees Fahrenheit in your house in San Fernando Valley. Touche. Okay. Misery loves company. Is that the saying? All right. Cool. Right. Let's go ahead and let's get started here. Hello, once again. My name is Roland Spatugan, and welcome to Pasadena Photography Arts Open Show, Pasadena, East Los Angeles. I am one of the advisors for our organization, the Pasadena Photography Arts, and I would like to welcome you all to our event, Open Show. If this is your first time to an Open Show event, welcome. If this is not your first time, if you're returning, I want to thank you so much for your support, for coming back and supporting our events. I want to talk a little bit about who we are as an organization and what we do before we get into our presentation. So first of all, for those of you who are attending for the first time, Open Show is a global platform consisting of live social events that provide artists a way to showcase their work to an audience via slideshow format without having to deal with the cost and effort of hanging up a traditional show. These events allow for a dialogue between the creators and the public in a way that I believe is unique that you would not experience when you would go to a regular gallery or exhibition. We at Pasadena Photography Arts have started our own open show chapter, and I am honored and proud to say that I'm to be hosting our 34th open show tonight. So, the Pasadena Photography Arts, it is our mission to bring a greater awareness of photography to the east side of Los Angeles and help emerging photographers achieve success at all levels. Now that we've transitioned to this virtual format, we are looking to increase our our audience and broaden our awareness now potentially across the nation, if not globally, especially having people check in from the East Coast, which is great. And I thank you all for coming and supporting uh, that in our mission. And we will be continuing our online programming until further notice. And I believe this is actually a great way to, like I said, bring more people together on this platform to see work um, created by these incredible photographers. While events like this are free and we would like to keep them free to the public, they do cost us as an organization money. And we do rely on an underwriter, underwriters to help our show, to fund our show. An underwriter is a person who will help fund our events through donations. So if you become an underwriter, your name could be right here. Why donate to the Pasadena Photography Arts? The PPA advisors, like myself, we donate our time, and I also donate money to the organization to maintain our free programming to the public. But however, it only goes so far. We ask for your financial support to cover the following. We got website and domain hosting costs, and now with Zoom, we have that. And as an organization, we still need to have insurance. We have a program called Forum, where we invite one person to speak from the industry, and we do offer an honorarium to our guest speaker, whoever is speaking at Forum. Also, there's social media and YouTube costs and 501c fiscal sponsorship under Fulcrum Arts, who is our fiscal sponsor. So we do still need donations to maintain that status. If you donate $250, you become an underwriter and you get your name here. However, we appreciate donations in any amount, so no gift is too small. So if you want to continue supporting programs like this, if you believe in supporting the arts, if you believe in supporting emerging photographers and giving them a platform to showcase their work to the public, then please visit PasadenaPhotographyArts.org and look for the donate button, and you can make your donation on the site. Next month, we have our programming continues with Forum. As I mentioned earlier, Forum is a program where we invite one person from the industry to discuss their background experience. Next month, on November 5th, we are going to have Daryl Curran. He's a photographer and curator in the area of fine art photography since 1965. And so if you are interested in getting notifications for our programming, or if you are a photographer and you would like to showcase and be possibly selected for our next open show, then please go to our website and scroll down on the right to enter your name and email address so you can be on our mailing list for our notifications. You can stay in touch with us, social media, Facebook, Pasadena Photo Arts, and on Instagram, it's at Pasadena Photo Arts as well. And of course, you can go to the website to make your donation or sign up for our email list. Before we begin, I just want to give a Zoom kind of Zoom etiquette here, checklist. Your microphones will be muted for the entire event. However, that does not prevent you from asking questions using the chat feature. As you were earlier saying hello from where you're from, you'll be using the same feature to ask your questions. And I highly encourage engaging during the slideshows and asking your questions. We'll have a few moderators here to assist me in looking at the questions, and hopefully I'll get to yours and to ask the photographer your question. the way it'll work is that each open show presentation will begin with an initial viewing of the projects, followed by a alongside narration from the artists themselves. So what I'm going to do is present the slideshow in its entirety from one presentation in silence, so we can appreciate the work. And then after that, I will introduce the photographer, and at that point, we can look at images, specific images, and answer any kind of questions that you may have. And I'll be having a discussion with the artists themselves, talking about the work. This event is being recorded, and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. It is called Pasadena Photography Arts. So if you are unable to finish or stay with us for the entire evening, that's okay. You can always come back and check the YouTube channel for the recording, or you can also refer other people who were not able to make it this evening to see tonight's presentation. At this point, I would like for all of you, if we could, what I would like to do is darken the room, so to speak. So if you could do me a favor and turn off your videos, that way we can get optimum, I guess, room to give our full attention to the presentations. And I'll have the advisors, if you can, just go down the list for people who have not turned off their video. If you can please do that as well, that would be amazing. Thank you very much, advisors, who are here to help to assist me. And at this moment, before I begin the presentations, I want to say a few words. I want to thank all of the firefighters and all of the first responders who are risking their lives in order to save the lives of others while battling these brush fires here in California. I live in Pasadena, California. When I look out my window, and I can look out this window, it's behind this camera, I can see the smoke coming from the San Gabriel Mountains. And I want to thank all the firefighters and the first responders for protecting our lives and protecting our community. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I also want to recognize right now the Americans who have strove and continue to fight for equality, to make this country a better place for all of us. As an American of Chinese and Filipino descent, I would not be here, neither would my parents, if it wasn't for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Immigration Act of 1965 that followed. Both of these pieces of legislation were the result for the desire of change. Change does not happen in silence. One has to speak up. Equality has not been guaranteed in this country. It has to be demanded. That being said, Black lives matter still. Thank you. Our first photography series this evening depicts imagery that has a stark familiarity to us, despite being from another part of the world. While the pandemic has caused isolation, disconnect, and despair, these images provide a reminder that we are not alone in all of this. Here is Social Numbness 2020 by Adam Ramjean. It is my great pleasure to announce and welcome live from London, England at 1:47 a.m. in the morning. Please welcome Adam Ramjean.
Hi, thank you, Roland, and thank you, OpenShow, for having me on here today. And also, I think a really great message you had at the start as well, which even though I'm in the UK and we don't have the kind of crazy fires that I've seen in the news, it's I think it's a very good message that you shared. A quick background about myself, a bit cliche, but I've been always interested in photography for as long as I can remember. But it's only really the last 8 to 10 years that I've put a lot more into it. I've had no formal training, but over this period of time, I've been really influenced by some photographers that I've met, in particular Cleveland Arend and Brian Lloyd Duckett from London. Also some amazing books that I've read. I think Gary Winogrand and Joel Merowitz spring to mind the most. And also, I don't know if you can see, I've just borrowed from one of my friends, The Americans by Robert Frank, which I've only just started and it is amazing.
Nice.
It's incredible. And also, surprisingly, I would say Instagram. And maybe not for the obvious reasons. I've actually made some friends on the application and we speak to each other a lot. We're all in the same stage, all learning and practicing. And it's a great place to bounce ideas around and to keep motivation levels up. So I think that's probably been where I am right now. And coming to my project, so I really wanted to capture my lockdown in North London, in particular, Islington, if you want to look on Google Maps. But that's where I am. And essentially, for a few months, I think it's quite difficult to remember. It's such a blur when exactly it was. You weren't allowed to leave your house for anything apart from for exercise or to go grocery shopping. So for me, it was to capture that period of time. And I normally like to shoot in color, but for this, I decided to shoot with black and white in mind to really reflect how life had lost a lot of excitement, a lot of interest compared to how it normally was. And I'd say if there was a catchphrase, a buzzword for this period of time in London, it was social distancing. And hence the name of my project is Social Numbness 2020.
I'm going to let's go ahead and take a look at the work again. And we're going to just
I think the first few shots here are from my house, and you probably notice the bar in one of them is exactly where I'm sat right now, and next to me is my girlfriend's desktop computer because she's still working from home. So I'm a bit squeezed in here, but also I think I would have very much struggled if it wasn't for my girlfriend, whose name is Eve, and my name's Adam, to get through this period of time. This shot here is a familiar shot where you're watching, well, in my case, my girlfriend be the allocated person to go to grocery shopping while I stay at home diddling my thumbs.
Right. Designated shopper, right? That's an interesting word now. We had designated drivers, but now we have a designated shopper. Yep.
So you want to be, unlike the driver. This is when my turn to go shopping. So I always went out with my camera. This sign really made me laugh when I saw what was written there. Dear customers, we close, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. Gross understatement. When virus go, we open, okay? Thanks.
Can you detect the part of England with that sort of spelling and accent with that sign? Is that even possible?
Yes. I think the way you have a in like mid-sentence is very much one style of English in London.
Oh, okay. Now, tell us about this line. I'm guessing they're not a line for concert tickets.
No, and it's a line to go into. It's a grocery shop called Sainsbury's, I guess like Walmart or something. And it's you can't see the front of the queue because it goes around the corner because it's one in, one out, and it goes back around the corner the other side as well. So you queue up for maybe an hour to get into the supermarket, only to find there's no toilet roll, which is I'm a little concerned it might start getting back to that level again, the way things are going, but fingers crossed.
I'm just going to put this out there. It's not lost on me on Who's wearing the mask and who isn't?
I think this must be universal, I assume, from things I've seen in the US as well, at least on the news, because you have two two people here who are, from what I've read, more susceptible to have a more serious version of the virus, and one person is choosing to. Well, when I took this photo, you wear a mask to protect other people and not yourself. I think there's some research saying actually does kind of protect you as well, but this kind of shows you the thought process here of these two people.
Right.
The dog social distancing here.
Right.
And so this period now, this section is where the next few shots are outside as I'm walking to a different shop to kind of take some more shots in a different angle, where it's in amidst the heat wave where temperatures were hitting, I think, 37 degrees Celsius. So I've Googled this before. It's about 99 degrees Fahrenheit,
And
which
that,
is extremely high for London, and
right,
our
that's
buildings are not designed for that.
right. Have you ever, all the years in your living in like England or London, have you ever experienced that type of heat ever?
Not that I can remember. I think maybe once it's got close to that, but not for such a prolonged period of time. And you'll see here a lot of photos of people near their houses just sitting outside, because they're not strictly meant to be outside, but I think a lot of people in central London, like myself, we don't have a garden or a balcony. So I think there's a little bit of leniency if you're sitting like somewhere outside your house on the street
Right.
to avoid the kind of furnace of your house.
Now, during this time when people started to come out, I think I talked to you earlier. Like there was a restriction where you really couldn't just be out at the park, right? You just had to have a purpose. Either you're going to work or you're going to go to the grocery store, but you couldn't be just laying out, hanging out somewhere. Is that
Yes,
correct?
so one of the other things is you could do exercise, and you saw obviously a flood of runners, um, which a lot of people complained about, but it sounded fair enough to me. But if you were in the park and you weren't doing exercise, you had some people who were employed by, I guess, the local council, so not policemen, but they had like high vis jackets telling you to get up and leave and go back home.
Wow, wow. And that's for to hear something like that and living in the United States. That's and I know in Italy it was actually even more extreme, where you had to have a designated shopper from your family and go out and sign some paperwork before you actually went out into the store. It just seems
Mm.
so such a foreign idea here in the United States for to have that kind of that limited restriction um, to be imposed on the citizens there.
This guy, it was really hot, and he was wearing a lot of layers. And he's at a bus stop in London, and there's a very reduced bus service at this point in time. So he must have not been enjoying himself in
Yeah,
37-degree heat with a hat, probably 3 layers on.
yeah. Now, there's a comment there in the chat by Debbie. Some of these images feel like Helen Levitt's work. People outside of their homes during the summer heat. There's a quiet and humorous element to the work. I would definitely agree as we see the next
Oh,
series of images.
no, thank you very
And
much.
this I love this one. And is this still during the time? Like I think you explained this to me before. Like if you were to go outside, you could leave your place, but you had to be with a certain radius of your place.
Well, if you, by the letter of the law, you were not allowed to leave the house unless you're doing exercise, health emergency, or grocery shopping, or doing a job where you couldn't work from home. So this is actually where I live, this building here, and that is like the kind of front garden which is shared by the ground floor. So I don't have access to it. But I thought it was quite interesting because on the other building where you can see someone sitting outside, hanging out of the window, it kind of shows you the kind of difference between the haves and the haves not in like such a small area where
Yeah,
some people suddenly have a garden. It's like super valuable when you're in a lockdown. And in
right,
the past, it would be like, not sure it would be that valuable.
right. And this is their way of being outside because with if they want to follow the letter of the law, they really can't be going outside. And this is their way of being outside. To me, this that whole idea of restriction as such is such it's so unmanageable because I during this time I was able to just get out of the house and from Zoom meetings and just just go out and breathe. And we, before the fires, we had some amazing weather here because no one was driving, no one was outside. So it was such an amazing time to be outside earlier, like March and April. But I can't imagine not being able to even do that during this time. So I think these shots are kind of very telling.
It's also, I have some friends who live outside of London, and they like having the best of time. They have like a big garden, and they're sitting outside with like a gin and tonic, and we're like hanging our heads out of the window trying to cool down.
Right, and like you have these two up on the second floor here, and I know I talked to you earlier. This reminds me of watching a stage production, West Side Story or something like that. You're watching a play, and like these two are gonna have a conversation. That's the scene, and it has that framing. It looks so much like a stage production, but this is reality here, and
Yeah.
and it's their limitation of what they could possibly do within the letter of the law.
I think the girl in particular on the right hand side of the image, it's black and white, but that's a yellow inflatable dinghy or boat or something that you'd have in a swimming pool.
Right,
So I think she's living her summer holiday hanging outside of a window.
right. I mean, you know, and it was warm enough for sure.
Yeah.
And it looks like these guys are kind of just coming together for a little sort of social gathering, or maybe they live together. Maybe I don't know, right?
Yeah. Well, strictly speaking, they should be living together, which could well be the case.
Mm-hmm. I love this one too because it's you're again going back to Debbie's comment about these being like Helen Levitt's work, people outside their windows. Um, and I think I talked to you about this. This could be like another sub series that you could do. I'm not sure now that restrictions have been lifted, people are not so much doing this again. But if it starts to tighten up, like you said, they may resort to doing this all over again. And of course, there'd be a question of you being outside. What are you doing taking these pictures, right? So there'd be also that.
Yeah, so I did get stopped by the police actually once when I was taking photos. I think there's a limit to how far you're allowed to go if you're doing exercise or to go shopping.
Right.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was maybe 4 miles, so 4 and 5 miles. That'd be too far. 3 miles, let's say. And I was kind of pushing it. And I said, oh, I was going for a long walk for exercise. But he saw me with my camera. He's like, put the camera away and go home. And then, that's what I did.
Yeah. And I absolutely love this shot because it's to me, it's saying, I'm going to be able to be outside, no matter, pushing the envelope in that sense. It's like, well, technically, officer, I'm not leaving anything. I'm in the car still. It's just part of my leg and my body is sort of outside trying to get some fresh air. So a very creative way of trying to just enjoy the outdoors. And I will also want to encourage everyone who's watching, if they have any questions, please feel free. This is the time to do that in the chat session. So I got a question here from Katie. I'm curious, living in California, what, if anything, was done in London during the depicted time period with so many restrictions and such overwhelming heat to mitigate such oppressive conditions for the homeless? What a great question.
Well, actually, it varied by borough within London. And this is something I never really clearly understood, but they were able to take all the homeless people in during the lockdown. And it just makes you wonder, well, why don't they just do that all the time?
Right.
I think that's when the restrictions lifted, they removed that, but they definitely had accommodation for everyone. And these last few photos are when things started to open up. So I started walking into central London, but it was like a ghost town. It's nothing like it normally is.
I love this shot too. It does have this very sense of isolation with the bottom silhouette, bottom right.
And it's the reflection on the surface from a pond underneath, like a little stream.
We got a question here from Britt Salveson. Hello, Britt. Did you get into conversations with any of the people in your photos? Did your camera give you an excuse for socially distanced interactions? Very amazing question, Britt. Thank you.
So I really try and avoid speaking to people when I'm taking photos. I generally like doing candid as much as possible. I don't have any kind of posed portraits. I actually spoke to one person once, this guy who was sat outside of a tattoo shop. He was like head to tail, head to toes tattoos, looks really cool. And I thought, well, surely he wouldn't mind getting his photo taken. So I asked him, and he said he didn't want his photo taken. So that was the last time I asked someone. I thought, if that person says no, then I think that I'll draw a line under it.
Well, I do admire you for asking permission first, because oftentimes we do things and ask for forgiveness later. But I do respect, at least you tried, and doing so. That's some respect there as well. Um,
Thank you.
so we have another comment from Katie. Even though these are photos of past events, there is an eerie vibe foreshadowing a darker future. Right.
Yes, I see that, and I hope that's not going to materialize. But I guess
Yeah.
time will tell as we
Right.
go into winter.
Well, Adam, I sincerely thank you so much for attending this at the early hours in the morning. We actually have one more question
Gotcha.
here from Gail. It's are you using film or digital?
I'm using digital, but it's a Fuji camera, and you can have like film simulations in JPEG, which is what I shoot for black and white. And also, when you put technical thing, when you put it in black and white on your camera, it means that when the EVF goes to black and white as well, and it kind of helps makes you think more black and white than color.
Right, right. That's true. So, thank you for asking that question, Gail. Um, a lot of good, some kudos there in the comments in the chat section. Thank you so much again, Adam. Any last words for coming coming from London? Anything you want to say?
Just another thank you. It's been great to be selected to be on the open show. I'm actually not going to go to bed. I'm going to stay up and watch the rest of the show because I'm going to work from home tomorrow tactically.
Oh, okay. So maybe we could do a before shot of the levels of alcohol right now, and then when the show concludes, we'll do an after shot to see what levels and which ones you prefer. I'm just kidding.
Yes. I'll wait for after Cocktails by Hawk. If he's going to talk about different cocktails, we can
Oh,
see
that's
which
right.
is my favorite. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, thanks again. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for being here really early in the morning in London, and I wish you all the best out there in London. Thanks. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
All right. That was amazing. Thank you again, Adam. And moving on to our next presenter. So, the creator of our next project is not only a photographer, but he is also an expert mixologist, as Adam was kind of giving you a little bit of preview here. I hope you have a beverage close by, because I guarantee you are going to want something after seeing these very refreshing photographs. Here is Cocktails by Hawk, created by Saeed House. Let's take a look at these images. Let's take a look. Mm. Sorry, we're on. I didn't know we were on. That ended kind of abruptly. Say hello to your new favorite bartender and your new BFF, Saeed House, aka Hawk. Say hello.
Hey guys, how you guys doing? Good to see you all. Thank you for coming.
Um,
Super excited to be here for sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, there's a lot to process going on right now, but tell us just a little bit about yourself, if you could.
So I am a bartender, or was a bartender, prior to the pandemic. Um, I work at I work at the Kimpton Everly Hotel here in Hollywood, which is right next to the Capitol Records building. And prior to all this happening, the at least the pandemic happening, I picked up a camera and started photographing my cocktail recipes and whatnot. And then when the pandemic happened, it just kind of translated into doing a lot more photography because I have this Instagram page called Cocktails by Hawk. And I work with a bunch of brands shooting cocktail recipes and doing sponsored posts and whatnot. And yeah, I really kind of hit the ground running like super hard once back in March. And I pretty much taught myself as far as photography by watching YouTube videos and kind of referencing things that my friends have been doing that are working in the same kind of creative space that with me. And yeah, I mean, it's just I'm very kind of fortunate to have had this kind of like a side hustle because it has been pretty great as far as just having money coming in outside of bartending. So super,
I,
yeah.
I think that's amazing, and it shows our like I don't know American spirit of innovation to just like, all right, we have this thing in front of us, the pandemic, things are shut down. I'm sort of unemployed, furloughed, whatever you want to call it, and you turned this around, picked up. I mean, you already kind of shooting, but then you kind of went in this other rabbit hole of learning how to light for product photography, and you took a deep dive, and you kind of come out. We're still in the pandemic, but you're kind of coming out of this rabbit hole with a portfolio of your own drinks, and I think that's like, you know what? Take that, pandemic. Take that. This is what you got. It's like
Right.
this is a great. I think it's a very inspiring story, and thank you for sharing that. And thank you for and being like sharing that fact that you're self-taught in all of this. I teach photography, and in our school we teach commercial product photography, and I have to say, this is up there for what we would want our students to be able to do. So, I mean, congratulations on that. Let's go ahead and take a look at these images again. Um, and I think I just think it's really amazing, and I think what I see in the work is that you truly love what you do, and it I think it just definitely resonates in your shots. You take a lot of care for not only the
Right.
drink to make it look right, but it's the background, the location. You know, you're inspired
Right.
by kind of it's like a whole theme, and you understand production. You're around entertainment, and so you understand there's a whole maybe even a narrative you want to even try to at least put into some of these images.
Like especially like this photo right here. This is like kind of like my first time taking shots or taking photos outside of my home and kind of doing like on location shooting. So this was here done at Venice Beach on the boardwalk. You know, it was like this graffiti wall, and so I
Right,
kind of went there and did that at golden hour, so sun
right,
setting and whatnot. But
right,
I really love this photo so much just because it's just primary colors. It's like reds, yellows, and blues. It's
right,
just like
right.
it's just so for me, it's just so satisfying and it's like just to look at. Even I mean that is a delicious mezcal or a blood orange mezcal margarita. So that's
Oh,
like it was and that was the thing, like I'd like to do everything real. So I brought all the ingredients with me to the beach, whipped it up, shook up the cocktail, poured it in the drink or poured it in the cup, and then kind of moved it around from place to place to see where I could find a good photo. And as far as like even having the lime cut and stuff like that, and the ice, which was the biggest challenge because it's real ice,
yes.
not fake ice. And you know, especially for me living in West Hollywood, driving out there, it was like, you know, 45 minutes to get out there, and trying to keep your ice cold is a challenge. So
Right.
that was fun.
For those of you who have not tried product photography or are not familiar with product photography techniques, whenever you have to photograph ice, say a drink like this, there are plastic ice cubes that you can get that will emulate and look like ice. So to prevent from all that melting and all that, but the way Hawk is doing it,
No.
he's you're doing it for real, and
Yeah.
I think that's a testament to, you know, the way to do it, the way the
Right.
commercial photographers, but you're like, no, I'm gonna keep this real. I'm gonna be Mr. Method photographer. It's got to be real to me, and
Right.
you make it in the drink. And so so you're on Venice Beach with alcohol. Did you make a lot of friends while you're making these drinks?
That's the thing. It's like when I was shooting this, the guy who did the graffiti below, he was actually there,
Oh,
and I
he was
met him.
there. Okay, wow.
Yeah. And so I actually met him, you know, but you know, this was probably doing maybe like an hour of shooting, and at that point the cocktail was like pretty watered down. So I wasn't about to like give him a watered down cocktail, because he did ask about it and wanted to drink it, but I'm like, I would, as much as I would, I don't want you to drink this knowing that it's gonna taste bad and it's not gonna be good.
Look at you, even out on the scene, you're like, nope, no, I can't have you drink this.
I
This is
can't
just
do
it's so
it.
subpar of my work. You're like such a pure artist. That's amazing. We got a question here from Katie asking what is on the rim.
So on the rim, it's a cayenne chili salt, and then like for like especially this photo, I recently got a macro lens, and kind of I can kind of get in all that detail and those crisp little salt things, I guess you want to say it, but
Texture, yeah.
texture, yes. But again, you know, real cocktail, real drink. So I don't do the whole glycerin thing
Right.
for emulating condensation and whatnot. So
Right.
that was in the sun in my house, and you know, time is ticking because ice is melting.
Right.
So as much, if I get the shot, I get the shot. If I don't, then I got to remake the cocktail.
Right. It's almost like you're putting yourself on your own game show. It's like a challenge, right? It's like
Right.
you gotta create this cocktail and photograph it, and
Right.
without it melting all at one time. So I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's great.
This one was dope because there's a thing in the cocktail world or bartending world with clear ice. So it kind of looks like the cherry is just floating on there. So I have a
I see.
clear ice spear in there, and it's just sitting right on top. And I love the way how like the sun, or like the light is just kind of glistening on top of the cherry and whatnot. I thought that was kind of cool.
Right. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
this one.
Yeah, here you go with your on location. Look at you. You're like it's like a film production, but like not for like moving picture. It's just a still. You're like you do all of this. You bring your whole production for that still. What I think you know, again, I give you props for that. Tell us about this.
Yeah, yeah. So out in Joshua Tree, Airbnb, just got away for the weekend. What the cool thing about this is it was for this glass company, and the name of this glass is called the Mirage. And so I was like, you know what, taking that into consideration, let's fake a nice refreshing cold glass of water, but let's make it tequila, mezcal, and yuzu lemonade, and with some lime wheels. And that's exactly what that is.
Wow.
And again, golden hour, trying to capture the light with the coming through, just so you can kind of see the lemon and lime, but also the ice on top is another crucial thing. And again, like I think this was again on my macro lens, but also obviously seeing the bubbles in there and whatnot, it's like kind of does it for me. It looks refreshing and I want to drink it right now, but I don't have the ingredients for it.
Well, you know, all this is getting me really thirsty, so I'm actually, you know, partaking in some beverage right now as we go through these images. And look at this perfect timing. It's like yeah, I mean, you could plan this, and of course you could do post production, but I know, judging by exactly what you said, how involved you are, you're gonna do it for real. I gotta respect that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like this photo right here, like Ice Cube is like perfectly sitting up top, with the sun being like the kind of a garnish to the glass itself. And then yeah, it's just this was a fun shoot. And
Right.
again, time was of the essence because
Yeah.
The sun's going down.
Sun's going down, right? And I mean, and I want to encourage our audience members. You know, if the answer is no, he can't make you a drink right now because he can't possibly give it to you. But if you have any other questions, please go ahead and submit those to the chat. But yeah, these are, and now this is like, to me, there's a lot of care and detail to set up something like this. And
Yeah, this was like kind of like a dark vodka Manhattan that was rested in sherry. So it's like the spirit itself was already dark, and it was a kind of like a pleasant surprise to capture that sherry kind of being reflected on top of the glass or on top of the liquid itself. But just kind of just playing around like in my house with different locations and trying to capture cool things like this. And like I said, pleasantly surprised with how this photo came out as well.
really done well. And I love how you do use color. It was very evident on that first shot of Venice Beach, or the first few shots, how you do utilize color to your advantage, and you definitely
Mm-hmm.
know your color palette. I mean, there's this whole thing you could learn about the color wheel and all that, and how you can use primary colors, secondary colors, complementary colors to effectively use that in your photograph. And you are clearly utilizing that in such a great way for these cocktails. And we have an action shot here.
Right. This was a kind of an accident because I had my camera on the table, and it was pointing at the glass, and I'm like, I just happened to look at the screen, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of dope. let me take a photo of that, and then and on top of that, let's get a pouring shot of it because that always looks dope, and it's like a
Yeah.
straight line. Just a lot of like symmetry going on with this photo, especially with the lines in the glass itself, and
Yes, for sure.
yeah,
And
that's dope.
the hints of the receding color in the background gives us a little bit more of a palette in this shot without taking too much away, because it's just a receding color, and this is a really great shot. Really classy. Like, what I get from your work is like, I'm gonna be a nice um, nice high-end bar, place I want to meet, to maybe take my partner, or take some friends, and kind of get dressed up for the evening and just make it a special evening. That's what I get when I see these images. Like, you take the time and effort to put something together like this, a work of art. I'm gonna take the time to put on some shoes and a shirt and,
Right.
and some pants and maybe
Right.
a clean shirt to show up at your bar and order something like this. So that's the kind
Yeah.
of vibe I get.
And as far as like doing garnishes and stuff like this, it's like I try to, as much as I want them to pop on the drink, because it is supposed to complement the drink, like I try to keep them very simplistic. Mint, it's always a mint sprig, it's always lemon
Right.
twist, peel, and orange peel. It's kind of like that's kind of the ballpark of what I like to play with. But like this one right here, it's kind of cool just because it was in the shadow and it was just glowing because it
Yeah.
was, and this
And
was also a beer cocktail with some
oh,
passion fruit.
interesting.
Yeah. And then the color of the cocktail itself was orange, and I just liked the way how it just glowed when I had to set this up down on my coffee table, and I was like, this is cool, this is dope.
Right. Yeah, there it
Same
is.
cocktail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right, nice.
Again with the macro lens, kind of
Right.
capturing all the detail of the mints and the lines and whatnot. It was kind of like the focus point. And then this one was like as this is actually another beer cocktail itself. It was like a stout beer, but it's like with coffee, and there was some Jägermeister in there. But just kind of cool how I like just how like the bottom of the glass was just like shining and glistening in the shadow because it was capturing that light
Right.
on the other side of that coffee table. And then
Right.
you know
You definitely got your vibe going. Now this looks interesting. It's almost like, is that like
that
cream,
is
ice
this.
cream?
So yeah, that was ice cream and another another beer. I don't just do beer cocktails, I promise. But it was another beer cocktail. It was like a blueberry stout with some ice cream and what else was there? Another kind of amaro in there, but it was just kind of again with the color palettes, it's like kind of going with these tan kind of tones and whatnot, these tans and these browns. And then again, like the cinnamon sticks, I wasn't quite as happy with the garnish, but you know, it kind of, and again, and also time was of the essence because
Of
it's
course.
ice cream.
Right. Right.
So you can't fake, I don't know how you could fake that,
No.
but
Well, it'd be mashed potatoes with color, but that's gonna change that'll change the texture of your drink. Right?
right.
It wouldn't be
That's the
real to
thing.
you. Yeah. So.
That's another thing. It's like, you know, I tend to take a sip or at least kind of enjoy the fruits of my labor after the shoot is done if it's not completely watered down.
Oh, we got a question here. Do you make up your own recipes?
Yes, all the recipes I create myself. You know, just the years of just being behind the bar and trying different flavors and whatnot. And I kind of reference this book called the Flavor Bible, which kind of gives you just different flavors and what it pairs with those other flavors and whatnot. So that's kind of like my go-to as far as, say I have passion fruit. Like, what does passion fruit pair with, or what does strawberries pair with? So this one was a delicious strawberry lemonade, and kind of this is me trying out the whole black background, one light source off to the side,
Right.
kind of doing it and like something in the foreground and background with the
Right.
cocktail in the center.
Nice.
Definitely a first time for me to like kind of capturing or doing this kind of style of photography, because I always like to mix it up.
Right.
But happy about this one too, because this one was refreshing and this would be perfect for you know, 100-degree weather day like it was today.
Yeah, we got a couple comments here from Elizabeth. You can fake ice cream with shortening or powdered sugar blended
Oh,
with icing. So
okay.
there's that. But I know you're Mr. Method. You wouldn't want to because you.
I mean, I want to drink it afterwards.
Yeah, I know you. That's kind of your reward. But in case you got to do it, you got to do
Right.
it. We got a question from Bing. How much for each drink? Well, Bing, it's free right now, but it's going to cost you when we actually get to the bar when everything is open. It's going to cost you. So.
Oh man. Yeah.
Oh, we got a question here from Carol. I love a good non-alcoholic cocktail. Do you have any recipes? Good question.
Plenty of them. We can talk about that
Well, if they wanted to
after.
find your recipes, is there a way they
Yeah.
could like find you on Instagram, right? Basically,
So yeah,
cocktails by Hawk, right?
absolutely. If you check me out on Instagram, Cocktails by Hawk is my Instagram, and I always post my recipes there, along with these photos and whatnot too. But working with non-alcoholic spirits, there are things out there that I could whip up for you, no doubt.
We got a couple more comments here from Adam, a previous speaker. What happens to the cocktails after you've taken the photos? Asking for a friend. I think you already told us what happens to these cocktails.
Sometimes they get sipped on, and then it breaks my heart to sometimes just obviously throw it away. But sometimes I just do that just because sometimes it'll be early, or I give it to my girlfriend.
Okay.
You know, she enjoys them too. But if I had to throw it away, you know, it's like you're wasting alcohol and whatnot. I get
Right.
it; it's precious, but
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if your email is flooded with volunteering to be assistants.
right,
Messages, right? You're gonna have a bunch of assistants who want to just be there and help you with these photo shoots. So I think
right.
working for a cocktail, that's another thing. And we have another comment from Ian. Isn't a non-alcoholic cocktail dessert? Yeah, you could do that too. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, yeah. You could do that. It's possibilities.
Yeah, it's a dessert. So. But Saeed, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this 2020. What can I say? There's so much that's going on right now, and I think having you on our show tonight was a nice way to. So if only temporary, a little bit of a distraction to when things will get better. And so, if you could maybe just tell us before closing. When things open up, for those of us who live in Los Angeles, where can we maybe find you in person, possibly?
Yeah, when things open up, I should be going back to the Kimpton Everly Hotel in Hollywood. It's a gorgeous bar, great bar program. I may or may not be going as lead bartender, so As far as building the menu there, I may be doing that. I may not be. I'm not entirely sure if I'm, because literally after this, I've been like, it's doing the whole social media thing and sponsorships with liquor brands is kind of showing me a different light that maybe I don't need to be working behind the bar 5 days a week. Maybe I can just do it a couple of days. And again, like, this is passion for me. It's like, as much as I love like coming up with cocktail recipes, I love taking photos of them and being able to share them with you all. So it's kind of it's like, you got to do what you got to do, right? You got to do what you love.
Right.
So, you know.
Right. Well, I can't wait till we get back into the point where I can go see you in person. It's been a long time, and that would be great. I can get to see you in person, order that drink right in person. That would be amazing. Thank you again, and much love to you, man. Peace.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. You guys take care.
Well, I don't know about you guys. I'm kind of parched still. So I hope you guys have a beverage in hand still. We still got a few more to go. And so I'm gonna have to ease up on this because I got 3 more to go. I gotta control this kind of thing. Otherwise I won't be able to present for the rest of the evening. But let's go ahead and move forward here. So, okay. A piece of art can represent the times it was created, and it also can be a form of protest. The Midnight Muralists are a group of committed citizens using art to change the world for the better. The next series is entitled Chalking Around with the Midnight Muralists Youth Protest Group by Bramley Johnson. Please welcome Bramley Johnson.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Rollins. I really appreciate you having me here. I wanted to say thank you to the Pasadena Photography Arts for making the show possible. I want to thank the other wonderful photographers I'm with and their great work. And I want to thank everybody else who was attending. Really brief summary for the Midnight Muralists. They are a group of high school and middle school kids who've seen all things that were going on around them, wanted to find a way to have their voices heard that was peaceful, and they decided on chalk art. Over the course of a lot of weekends, they've gone out and done dozens of really beautiful, impressive chalk protest images, and the group has grown since then. There are more and more students that are involved. Adults as well have joined the group, and they've done all of this despite constantly being around the police, threats from individuals that sometimes just happen to be walking by, and insults such as being called terrorists. So that's my series, Chalking Around with the Midnight Muralist.
Let's take a look at some of these images, and thank you for sharing that introduction information with us regarding the organization. For those of you who aren't familiar with Pasadena, this is our city hall, and this is an installation of some of the chalk art. I was telling Bramley before I actually met him, I was part of a bicycle ride for BLM. The evening that this chalk installation was happening, I didn't even know. But this is before he submitted the work, obviously, because it was still in the process of the making. But and I saw this when it was submitted, and I say, wait, I was actually here that night. I didn't get to meet him that night, but he was in darkness. But it was just really cool to see this right in front of our own city hall. We got a comment from Katie. She said that they voted for police oversight the next day after the very first image in front of City Hall, which is good to know.
Yeah. Amazingly, they left that image up for a long period of time. They generally take them out relatively quickly.
What's the average, like, how fast do these images disappear after you've finished them?
I think it depends on where the neighborhood is. If it's public property, it hangs around until they get around to it, essentially, which sometimes can be fast. But if it's places like this one, for example, which was shot, gosh, I don't know what that neighborhood is, but that's right above the Rose Bowl, so it's still Pasadena, I guess.
Right, yeah, it's still Pasadena. It's Linda Vista, probably the street Linda Vista or something like that, right? That's where it is.
Literally, you're looking at that edge is going down toward the Rose Bowl, right? Of course. They had somebody who came out the next day who was a civilian who brought their own mop and bucket and then wiped off words that she didn't like on it. So she didn't like white silence is violence. So she took out the white on the word. And then later on they went back and fixed it. And then somebody came and wiped out the whole thing. So it just really depends on where it is. Some of the parks have stayed for, there's an area called JPL, it's Jet Propulsion Laboratory over here in Pasadena, and there was one done there, and it lasted, I don't know, many weeks actually. This is a little arbitrary, I guess, but yeah.
Right. I think it's interesting that individual came out and didn't wipe everything out, but just wiped out what she thought was inappropriate to her. Yeah. So I'm thinking, well, silver lining, at least she didn't wipe everything out, but she just sort of made modification to suit her curation, because maybe she was curating for street art. I don't know. So, but it's interesting.
It's part of the individuals we've run into.
Right. And there's a comment here from Katie that this is outside of Trump's National Security Advisor's house.
Oh yeah, that is right.
Yeah. Well, here we have again another view of City Hall at night. The installation right in front of City Hall. So you have a drone, and so you're taking stills with a still camera, and then you have drone photography as well. Are there any problems? This looks like, I mean, this is already after the installation, but were there any problems just even you using a drone right in front of City Hall?
It's impressive. I thought the exact same thing that you did. I flew it around and thought, gosh, I don't know what the penalties are. I mean, I've heard, particularly in national forests, I do a lot of photography in national forest, and I've heard that they actually have the right to take the entire drone from you if they catch you using it, and that's
in the national forest though.
In the national forest. So I was very nervous. Turns out when we flew this, there were several police. There's a shot that I didn't like the way that the shadows and lighting had happened, but it was a great shot because there's a police car going right across the center there. But the shadows, and it didn't look right, so it was not the one I chose. But they drove right by. They clearly couldn't care less about me
Wow.
drone around.
That's interesting. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Pasadena, or those of you who even know of Pasadena, but you may not know this, camera left is the police station, which you don't see in this shot. So he did his drone right in front, literally, of the police station. So, and it's kind of, I mean, it's at least you weren't stopped and you were able to document this, let alone have the kids document, or at least exercise their First Amendment right. There's a question here from Tony. Did you guys ever feel endangered while doing this?
So in that last photo that you were at with the green, that was the one that we felt, excuse me, that I felt most endangered at. And I shouldn't say it because I never felt like my life was truly in danger per se, not at least what they're protesting, but an individual in that neighborhood came out and started screaming at the children and at the parents and started swearing at everybody. And it was just way over the top, and started filming everybody, claiming they're Antifa and that, like, who's paying you guys? You're brainwashed? I mean, and at the top of his, not quite at the top of his lungs, but he was turning to mothers of middle school kids and swearing at them and calling them names in front of the kids. I mean, it was to the point where it was, it just sort of showed the divide in this country that was just raw, and the nerve. And I could not believe, it's something that I never thought I would ever see. And I've lived all over the world, and I never thought I'd see that in person like that.
Right.
So,
and it's for chalk art too.
Exactly. It's stuff that they literally, this one in particular, certain neighbors came out, took extra long hoses and came out and intentionally tried to wipe out a lot of the things right after they finished. So it was, I mean, and of course you had people, I don't know if they had the same area. This is in South Pasadena. So South Pasadena tends to have, I think, a little bit of a Republican slant to it. And you had individuals who appeared out of nowhere with MAGA hats and were filming everything. I mean, it was really, for a bunch of teenagers doing chalk art on a sidewalk, it was impressive in a bad way to see the reaction of people. And it really, really defined how divided it is. And I very intentionally did not put photos of him or them screaming at each other in here, because I didn't want his face in it. And I also didn't want to detract from what the kids were doing. I think the message is far more important than the nonsense that he was trying to put out there.
Now, have you spoken to the kids who've witnessed, like, the negativity towards what they're doing, exercising their free speech? And if you've spoken to any of them who witnessed that, how are they managing it, or how do they take it?
So I tend to be the classic photographer ghost and not interacting at all and that kind of stuff, to don't spoil your own scene. But I do know firsthand that several of the kids have been concerned by it. This one, I mean, this is the same night in particular that several kids were really upset by that. Several parents were upset by it. They were there, and there had to be a lot of talk through it. But interestingly, a lot of the kids also were more motivated by it. So I think you get a little bit of both. Gosh, I don't know. We live in the times that we live in the United States are so incredibly divided. It's even hard to explain, because when you get into a bubble like Pasadena, which is truly a bubble in the rest of the United States, and you see this kind of division, it's hard to imagine what it's like when you get into sort of the nitty gritty of things in this country. And so, but it's been great. So
we have another question here from Kristen. Did strangers ever confront the screamers on behalf of the artists?
So that did happen, and I don't have a good story for it. I remember that it was more that there. So the JPL one that I'm thinking about was, there was strangers that would walk by and they would say, there was not a lot of direct confrontation like that one individual. There has definitely been some, but not as blatant or as aggressive. But there are lots of times where people will walk by and say things under their breath, or they'll sort of give really dirty looks and things like that. And a lot of times you'll have people who are around who see it, and then they have twofold. One, they'll sort of hang around, and after that person's left, voice support for the kids. You get a lot of people that drive by and honk, but funnily enough, you get a lot of people who weren't invited, didn't know what it was, showed up and said, "Can I use some chalk too?" And they went.
Oh, really? That's great. I mean, they're just joining in there. That's what you kind of wanted to do. It's more like, or they, at least I think what they wanted was for people to just kind of join in the conversation, so to speak, but an artistic one. I think it's a great thing. We have a comment here from Gary. As a South Pasadena resident, I apologize for the bad behavior of some of our intolerant neighbors. Thank you for making that comment. Gail, how did you get the privilege to photograph this coming of age of these young protesters?
So my partner actually teaches a lot of these kids and helps organize and puts together this whole thing with the kids. She was the one who put a lot of this in motion, even though it was their idea, and they run the Instagram, they do everything themselves. She helps with the whole group. So that's how I ended up photographing it. And, just sort of one thing moved into another, and it's been a lot of fun. And, I have a ton of great photos. It was really hard to narrow this down, actually. So,
right. David asked, do you post when you are going to shoot?
They do. Yeah. Then when they chalk, they do. They post on their Instagram, Midnight Muralist. So you can see. I think typically they do. They post on there, so they talk. But it's something you can DM as well and get like all the details. So if you wanted to actually be part of the whole thing and go and chalk with them, you would need to send a message and then be part of the email chains and everything else to know when to show up.
Thank you for posting that in the chat. It's called @MidnightMuralists. Thanks, Katie. Burning question here. Police officers observing what's going on. What did happen, if anything?
So this group, I must say we've never had bad. The police officers have actually been really kind for the most part. Whatever the case may be, we've never had any real conflict with the police officers. And I'll tell two brief stories. This one, the police showed up, and there was actually to the right there, which unfortunately I did not get a good shot of. I got a lot of them, but I didn't like any of them. There's, I think, 3 or 4 police cars, all with their lights on. And there's a half dozen police officers here for this. So it looks like they're like raiding something, and these kids are continuing to do their chalk while the police officers are walking around. And there was a sense of the ridiculousness of it as it went on. And, I think that they were looking at it to see, what we were doing, or I say we, I'm not part of it. So what they were doing and, what they were putting. The report came in, and again, this is somebody that I think specifically did this intentionally, is to say there are people scaling and graffitiing the side of this building, which is a state building, and they said, they're spray painting and they're using climbing equipment. So when the police showed up, they had this really very outlandish story. And then the second that they were there, I think there was actually a sergeant amongst them. She instantly was like, well, clearly that's not the case.
Right.
So they left. The other story I will tell you was that at the location in South Pass where we had probably the biggest conflict, and that's the finished product when those police were there. So that's them doing the finished one. The police showed up, and this individual that was on this tirade continued on the tirade, and then was asked to go stand to one side. And then the muralists had a conversation with the officer, and the officer said, look, you can't do this in the middle of the street. They were doing a lot of things in intersections. They said, look, you'll be fine, et cetera, et cetera. But he did imply, he said, we can't stop you from doing anything on the sidewalks, though.
So the police officers kind of just gave you
I didn't give us an in, and I said they have an in or anything like that. I don't think it was it. I think they simply implied these are the laws. So if you do anything in this area, and I think it's because of the fact that I think there's support amongst a lot of them still about sort of the movements and everything else. So I thought it was a funny story too.
That's good to hear. And we have a comment here, question from Kristen. If you had to choose your favorite of the series, which one is it and why?
Ooh.
It's a tough one to
Uh,
choose.
yeah, it's tough to choose amongst your children, right? Which one you like best. So, there's a lot of them for a lot of different reasons that I really like. There's one actually that didn't make it into this that I didn't even realize till well after it was submitted that I really like that's on my webpage. It's the top photo there. But I think I think it would be one of the ones earlier on where you have the three girls sitting down, or I actually really love this one too, which was this was what I call a throwaway photo, where I'm just taking really fast photographs, trying to capture as much as possible. And I just liked it. Had the flag in the back.
Right,
It just had such a good touch to it. So,
right,
I don't think there's one that in particular that's my favorite, but each has a special place in my heart.
right. Good. Great job, Bramley, Salazar, AL, John Pendleton. Wonderful work, Bramley. Really enjoying it. Um, I love this shot too with the drone. It really gives us a perspective that we wouldn't be able to see even if we were there in person because we just be seeing a certain point of view from our standing height versus this giving us the whole picture, pun intended, of the whole thing. So I think that's great. And thank you for posting his website, bramleyland.com. It's in the chat if you're interested in seeing more of his work. Thank you for that. Um, and I don't, in the interest of time, I want to make sure I give other speakers some time. And if anyone has any more questions or comments about Bramley's work, let's go ahead and get those in the chat before we close out here. And this is the last shot. I do want to say that first of all, I want to thank you for documenting this. As a photographer, these are very challenging environments, regardless of the social situation. It's pitch dark outside, and you've got horrible lighting, street lighting, no lighting because you're in a place that's just really dark. A lot of trees in Pasadena even obstructs the street lights. So the fact that you're actually documenting this very, very low light and be able to capture what you can capture on top of people yelling at you, calling these kids terrorists, and then with the floodlights of the officers, which you would think would help you out with the lighting situation, but it has a whole other element of this microscope on you guys. I got to commend you for being able to pull these images out amongst all these obstacles in that situation. So congratulations on that. I want to close this out. Does anyone else have any more comments for Bramley? And if you do want to see more of his images, you can definitely go to his website there. One from Pam, well done, Bramley. Great shots and congratulations to the kids, parents, and Katie, Pam, and Chris. All right. Any last words, Bramley?
No, I think that's it. Thank you again for having me here. I think this is such a great format for photographers to be part of. So really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you again. Thanks a lot. Okay. Moving on here. Our next series takes us to the other side of the planet once again. And because we are, as U.S. citizens at least, we are unable to really freely travel internationally now. At least it's very limited in terms of our travel to any kind of international destination. So I, for one, am more than willing to go on a virtual trip, as we did earlier in London, and now with this series. So here is Edge Effect by Jeffrey Gunthart. I have to say that after seeing these, I have such a yearning to be able to get my passport, hop on a plane, and just go somewhere else internationally. But I'm really glad that I was able to see that. So please welcome Jeffrey Gunthart.
All right. Thank you, Rollins. Hi, everybody. So a little bit about me. I started my photography career working as a grip at Smashbox Studios in Culver City quite some time ago. And then from there, I moved on to being one of LA's first digital technicians working for Industrial Color. I learned a ton there. But after about 2 years, I decided to go freelance. So I started assisting and freelancing as a digital technician for a lot of photographers in Los Angeles. Made a lot of connections and friendships, and those led me to start a small business where I was retouching and digital teching for a lot of magazines here in LA and New York. I also was, for a short time, an instructor at the New York Institute of Photography Adventures, which is a little bit different than their school in New York. But I did all these things, but I never actually was a photographer. So I never made pictures for myself. So about five and a half years ago, I started shooting for myself, doing product work, a lot of portrait work. It's creative and there's a lot of challenges to it, which has been a lot of fun. But somewhere near the fourth quarter of 2019, I wanted to change things up again. So that's where this project comes in. It's called Edge Effect. I was trying to be fancy, so I have to actually read this because I couldn't memorize the whole thing. So here we go. The edge effect is what happens when two adjacent ecosystems overlap. Think where water meets land. The intersection results in a greater diversity of life and community structure. In this project, in this instance, the first ecosystem is me and what I have learned to this point in my life. The second ecosystem is a hypothetical what if. What if I did what I initially intended to do when I was younger? I originally wanted to be a documentary photographer and filmmaker, but I ended up retouching blemishes off of like Brad Pitt for Vanity Fair. But this project is the overlap of these ecosystems, who I am and who I wanted to be. So it's more of a proof of concept that I can take what I've learned and apply it to the photographer I want to become. So with that said, I bought a ticket, grabbed my camera and flew to India, and I spent most of February and March there of this year. So.
Yeah, I am so glad you were able to get there right before everything happened. But of course, different opinion is like, well, you got there before everything happened, and then it happened, and you were somewhere else out of the country. Before we even get to the photos, I just wanted, how was it? Was it difficult for you even just coming back? Like, what was that like?
Coming back was the easiest thing ever. I was reading all these things on the news about, people spending 7 hours in line to get out of like LAX. I flew to LA on the 19th of March. I landed, got my bag, and was out the door in under 30 minutes. So it was super easy.
Best time to travel, right? The pandemic, I suppose.
Yeah, the very end of the pandemic. I left India, I think a couple days before they actually closed the airport. So I just made it out.
Just made it out. I stopped at this photograph because, first of all, my God, look at this photograph. I'm instantly reminded of, I love Vivian Maier. I love Vivian Maier's work. I'm instantly reminded of that era. It's got this another timely feel to it. And of course, Robert Frank, The Americans, which Adam just showed us, he just bought the book from. It's got that. And also, besides all those points, I love this kid's hair.
I told you when we first talked that every male under 30 in India has amazing hair. It's just styled perfect.
It's amazing. I mean, it's just, I just love his look. And the dog, of course, on the upper right. Derek's pointing that, of course.
Yeah,
but,
in this picture here, I stopped to look at the dog, and then this kid was walking by, and he just asked me in broken English, "Take my picture." I snapped about 3-4 frames, and then he said thank you and left. So.
And you haven't heard. I mean, he has no idea. His image is like now being transmitted globally.
Yeah,
actually,
he's in Pasadena.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. So great story for photography. And I do want to comment, and as we're all looking through these images, and these fellow photographers out in the audience who are looking at this, I do love how you use composition to frame your imagery. I mean, it's just so simple, but yet so effective, and that's why it is very effective, because there's a simplicity there, but yet it does hit us home to seeing what you want us to see.
Yeah, it's definitely intentionally framed up, like this one here. You know, I hung out for quite some time waiting for all the elements to really unfold in front of me.
We're getting some comments here. Rick, excellent work, Jeffrey. Yes, you learned much from working on other people's images. Britt Salveson, Jeffrey, did I understand correctly that you worked on film sets? Did that influence your photography?
Yes and no. I mean, I just recently started working on some film sets, and back in the day when photography was happening, you know, with like the 5D Mark II came out, we were kind of doing hybrid jobs where we were teching for a photographer, and then that turned into kind of digital management for the film side of it. But I don't think working in film influenced my photography, but film did, for sure. You know,
Right.
That kind of stuff. This
question from Derek. Jeffrey, did you find the poverty in India so much that it was hard to photograph people in such circumstances? Great question, Derek.
Well, I mean, there is definitely that side of India, and I didn't really focus my camera on that element. I'm not there to shoot poverty. I was just there to shoot India as a whole. But there are moments where it's quite intense. You know, I didn't photograph any of it, but
right.
It takes a tougher skin to walk through some of the towns of India.
I would imagine so. As I mentioned earlier, some of my ancestry is Filipino, and I've been to my homeland. And as a kid, when I went there for the first time, I was in complete shock because I didn't know anything but American culture. And I went over there, and it was just complete shock to realize that this is where my people are from, and this is how they live on a day-to-day basis. So
as a child doing that, that's a different
perspective altogether. And
I was 43. I was shocked in India, you know, and I had 43 years to prep, you know. So,
right, exactly. We got a question from David Freeman. What was your go-to lens for this trip, anyways?
So yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I brought two cameras, the Ricoh GR3, which is 28 millimeter in full frame, right? And then the X Pro 3, but I brought several lenses, but I never took off the 35 millimeter in full frame. So that was it. I kind of restricted myself to those two. And I actually shot a lot more with the Ricoh because it's just so nice and easy just to pull it out and snap some shots and you're gone before anyone notices. Like this one, you know, these guys are so busy photographing this couple that I was just behind them, grabbed a shot, and I walked away.
And that's kind of the way that's kind of what we try to do with street photography, is not to be so much affecting the scene that's unfolding in front of us. And I think you've definitely been able to communicate that. I got a comment here.
Hybrid, though. Like these images are street and semi-travel, I guess maybe 1% documentary.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's got a lot of those things going on with it too, for the combination of that. Comment from Edward: I appreciate your use of geometry in composition. Great job. I totally agree. Derek, is the right silhouette in front shooting a photo too? That's what it looks like, right? So the photographer in the bottom right?
Wedding photographer is in the front,
right,
next to me, and then the couple in the distance.
Right. I love how playful this one is. I mean, it's just, and the fact that it's in black and white, I think and I know in India there's going to be so many colors that could really kind of maybe make the image complex, and we kind of miss what's going on. But I love the fact that your whole series is in black and white. We kind of see the beauty of black and white, and I believe is that you really see what's in front of you. You got to deal with the subject matter that's in front of you without the complexity of color. So, and I think the playfulness of this, and of course your framing geometry, really, really resonates through this image.
I chose to do the whole thing, my whole India trip, in black and white, which is kind of interesting and maybe a little crazy at the same time. Just now I'm kind of converting some images I haven't used into color to jog my memory of what it looked like, you know.
Right. Got a comment here from Pamela. Love these images. Thank you, Pamela.
Yeah, thank you. This gentleman here, he's kind of the head of this gym. All gyms like this outside, in every town they have an outside gym that's free.
Uh-huh.
And this guy kind of was I guess the mayor of the gym.
Oh,
He just
okay.
talked to me, and I lifted some weights with these guys, and then I got a chance to take some nice photographs with them.
So is that your process? Like, I mean, with going on this trip, it's like, there was a question earlier with Adam, if he was does he interact? Does he find it a reason to interact with his subjects before taking a picture? Or is that kind of like the approach that you did on this trip, or can you tell us your approach?
Like we were talking about, it's a mixture of street travel and then a tiny bit of documentary. But I've got a lot more images, and some of the more intimate ones, I did just kind of show up and just start talking to people. Like at the gym here, I was there for probably an hour before I took my camera out. And then I started shooting, and I this whole trip has been a discovery of what, how to do stuff and where I want to go. But definitely being part of the scene first and then photographing it was definitely, I think, more productive.
Feeling like you're gaining their trust, and that way you feel a little bit more confident pulling out that camera eventually.
Yeah.
Right?
I even came back to this location the next day. I told him I was coming back. But exercise again. So
I think he wanted to do some like burpees with you or something. I don't know. Maybe he wanted to do some cardio with you.
he's in great shape. He was like 70 years old, and he was in super.
Oh, that's amazing. He's doing that sort of thing on those bars. It's amazing. And again, I just love the composition, your choices that you're making, and it's a really great match with black and white. I believe.
This is just does it fit the series? I don't know. Is it one of my favorite photos? Probably. I just love this picture because it tells the story of my trip and most of the people I met in India, how friendly they were. I'm kind of camped out next to an exterior light in Varanasi, and I'm just taking pictures with this artificial light source, and everyone that walked by waved at me and gave me the thumbs up. I just waved back, and I was like, this is amazing.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I think, and that's kind of a great way for you to just, try to, you're trying to be a fly on the wall, and then they recognize you. But I think what they give you back, I think it's a great thing that you're obviously not unwelcome in this situation. And they're just giving you this positivity from them.
Yeah. This was tens of thousands of people flowing past me.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah.
Big celebration in February in Varanasi. I think it was Lord Shiva's wedding anniversary.
Right.
So it was pretty amazing.
I got a question from Gail here. What were you most curious about when you decided to go to India? How did you choose where you were going to go? Good question.
It's a good question. I picked India because it's fairly budget friendly, and I was just doing this on my own, so for quite some time. But going to India, I kind of just concentrated on the north of India. The time I was there, North India was quite pleasant. I was even in, Rajasthan, which is mainly desert. But in February, it was like 70 degrees, so it was beautiful. So I just decided to stick with northern India, and the next time I'll go to South India.
We had a question from Dave. Was this during COVID, and this was right before COVID happened?
This was February, March. So right. COVID was happening. I took the risk and went. Health insurance, traveler's insurance.
Right.
But I did go, and it did affect my trip for sure. There were a couple of moments where I couldn't do what I wanted to do or go where I wanted to go because places were shutting down. Places where people would gather were shutting down. Like, for instance, the Indian-Pakistan border, they have a daily show, right, of closing the gates or changing the guards. I'm not really sure exactly what it was because I didn't get to go, but it was closed due to COVID. They didn't want large masses of people getting together and yelling at each other, basically, because there's a lot of spirited yelling back and forth between India and Pakistan.
Question from Derek, were you able to go to Kashmir region?
Did not go this time. It's on my list. It was still considered by the US government as a fairly unsafe place to go. Not because of COVID, but because of, the problems that the Kashmir region is having and has had for a while. This is also one of my favorite.
Tell us about this photo.
So this is one of the more intimate photos where I asked the gentleman in the middle, the guy who's staring at me, if I could come into this kitchen where they were cooking. This is Amritsar, the Golden Temple, where they cook for 80,000 people a day for free.
Oh, wow.
So I asked if I can come in. He told me to take my shoes off. I have to wear my head wrap, wash my hands, and I can come in. And I spent 2 hours in there drinking tea with these guys and looking at the kitchen. And then I took my camera out. And
Nice.
this moment is just a curiosity between him and I. Like, I think we're both just wondering something about each other, you know?
Yeah, I mean, those eyes are just piercing right through me too. It's just, I love this photograph too, and I'm glad you ended this series or this presentation with it. I want to open this up for just a couple more minutes. If anyone has any questions or comments with regards to Jeffrey's work. Also, before we end this, do you have any plans to go besides India? Where else?
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, proof of concept, you know, I think I can take a decent photo outside the studio. And I really want to pursue this line of work, conservation, documentary, some environmental stuff. So as soon as we are allowed to travel internationally, I will be traveling to do my first true documentary series or documentary project based on clean water. A necessity, but not necessarily a human right globally. So I think I'm going to go to Southeast Asia and start working on the Mekong Delta and north up to China in regards to damming of the Mekong and how it's affecting everyone below the dam.
Right.
The dams, there's going to be 60 soon.
Wow. I want to thank you for submitting your work first of all, and sharing this beautiful work and allowing us to dream again, to be able to travel once again, hopefully one of these days. And positive thoughts, and I wish you all the best of luck, and please do keep in touch with us, because and for those of you out there who want to see more of his work, go to his website. I believe your Instagram is also on your website. If you want to follow him, maybe you'll see, whenever we can get to travel, you'll see his images coming from Southeast Asia, what he's doing. So that would be amazing.
January, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully we can go to January. We'll see Jeffrey on the road there with some beautiful imagery of the Southeast Asian region of this world. So thanks again, Jeffrey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rollins, and thank you, Pasadena Photography Arts. I really appreciate you guys putting this together. This was a lot of fun. So thank you.
All right. Okay. We are now approaching our final presentation here. So let me give you a little introduction here. Our final project this evening takes us on a journey that reveals an alternate view to the Miracle Mile and surrounding neighborhoods in Los Angeles. This series is entitled Unreal Landscapes, Los Angeles Plays Itself by Karen Constine.
Hi there.
Hi, Karen. We're going to take a look at your images first, and then we'll introduce you.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Thank you for that ethereal trip through Los Angeles. Please welcome Karen Constine.
Hi there. Okay, I'm going to bring this home. Thank you so much to the Pasadena Photography Arts and everyone involved tonight for having me and all the other photographers here. Just want to mention I'm a native Angelino, and my photography practice is often examine aspects of cultural tradition and spaces that are in transition. I'm very excited to be here tonight to present Unreal Landscapes, Los Angeles Plays Itself. Essentially, this project explores what a pandemic society looks like, unworldly and unreal. COVID has just changed all of our lives and ended way, way too many. While I was really encouraged to document the moment, initially I wasn't able to pick up a camera, and I realized that I needed a new language, a new way of trying to capture this surreal sterility of the moment. For me, it was really otherworldly. And so I'm happy to sort of take you through the journey I went through as I developed the project.
Do you want us to go ahead and take a look at these images now?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could start again. I'm just,
Sure.
Excuse me 1 second, I'm just pulling my, yes.
We already got a comment in here, if I could just interrupt for a second, from Rick. Great title, Unreal Landscapes, Familiar Spaces are rendered so imaginatively unreal. The conflict, coexistence of nature with society is made into heightened relief. Thank you, Rick. And we have another comment here from Britt. Otherworldly is the perfect description. If you had a soundtrack for these, oh wow, what would it be? That's a tough question, Britt. Thank you for that, though.
I can actually answer that.
Okay, wow.
It would have to be either Jimi Hendrix soundtrack or a Frank Zappa, because both of them used infrared photography in the 60s, which was actually an influence for this as well. So infrared photography has a long history in the music industry and in Los Angeles. So there you go.
All right.
Maybe we go to the next slide.
Sure.
The next image. So what I ended up doing is I actually own and have several infrared cameras, but I decided to use my enhanced color infrared camera to render Los Angeles of this moment. I decided that infrared would really give us a new perspective, sort of translating LA into the Disneyland dystopia or the silent movie backlot that I kept seeing on the streets. Maybe go to the next slide as well.
I love what you said, Disneyland dystopia and the silent movie backlot. And I feel, as a Angelina myself, having pursued acting as well, I feel that way. It definitely is like it's just a huge backlot for film and entertainment.
And I would say by shooting an urban environment that includes trees and foliage, it sort of really spoke to the psychedelic feelings I was thinking when I was walking around my neighborhood during COVID. I kept thinking, this is my neighborhood, but it's not my neighborhood. I know many of us heard birds for the first time. I had coyote sightings. Trees were swaying. It was just so quiet and so surreal.
Got a question from Bramley. How do you select what will be pink and what will be black and white? At first thought, if it was organic versus non. You might want to explain the infrared camera process.
Sure, and maybe if we could go to the next image, that might help a little bit.
Sure.
You know, all of a sudden when this was happening, I started understanding the importance of the natural world. And by picking up infrared, an infrared camera versus a conventional camera, it really renders the sky and foliage in various shades that you cannot see with the visible eye. And then there's other things that you can do, including changing the light channels that make this more ever present. And essentially for this project, the look and feel of the infrared that I'm sharing with you is very much like echochrome. It's an infrared that's been discontinued, but was really highly used by the military, scientists and others to render like water and foliage. So this is all very deliberate in what I'm trying to do. I also want to mention, for those of you who don't know Los Angeles, I just want to speak to a moment about Miracle Mile. I live within 1,000 feet of the LA County Museum of Art, the Peterson Museum, the La Brea Tar Pit, and the soon-to-be Academy Museum. All these photographs were made during long walks during COVID. And maybe go to the next slide. Next, thanks. Just also want to mention, this is my neighborhood of 2 years. When I walked out the door, nothing looked the same. You can see in this new natural environment that LA's car culture is everywhere, but everything is still. Cars line the streets, but nobody went anywhere. Just everything was closed. Then go to the next slide. You know, here's an example of Los Angeles truly looking like a movie backlot. Like, this is like a pretend land, a place for dreamers. And oftentimes I would just go out my door and this would just be like I was living in a movie set. And again, this camera just really called to the moment. So here again, you know, no people, just deserted spaces.
And just to clarify a question from Gail, are you shooting film? Curious, and this is a digital infrared camera you picked up, correct?
It's a digital infrared camera. Maybe go a couple more slides here.
Okay.
Maybe one more.
Yep.
You know, as time went on during COVID, I kept seeing passageways and walls going up around my neighborhood, but I was also sort of noticing more and more the crazy foliage. Maybe go a few more slides. Then this is sort of an interesting, either one.
Okay.
It's fine, either one. You know,
okay.
The trees and plants started taking over the sky. And maybe it was to block out, you know, maybe it was for privacy, or maybe it was to block out things and block out people. Because when you walked, you rarely saw people in this neighborhood. And there's just another example of sort of that feeling in the next image. It's actually a banana tree that's gone wild. But with all this sort of shrubbery and trees everywhere, there were actually light moments and oddities sort of provided relief. So you know, here's a Buddha.
Right. We've got a question here from Barbara. Karen, do you see the infrared effects when you look through the camera, or are you pre-visualizing the color shifts?
A little bit of both. Yes, I'm using a full frame camera with the digital back, so I can see I can see some of it in my camera, and I can see where I can see things that are not visible to the naked eye.
Right.
But I'm not seeing it in this color spectrum.
Right. Another question here. You can control the colors, or is the pink the color all the time?
Well, one thing that's really interesting I've learned about Zoom is Zoom doesn't render color exactly right. So one thing I would encourage everybody, if you want to see them in more color accurate, please go to my website or please go to my Instagram. Essentially, the way I am going for an echrochrome look, stylized for California, Los Angeles expression. So I came up, I can do certain things to the color palette. I'm hoping that answers Barbara's question.
Right. I think a lot of this is because of the way infrared technology does work and how it renders color depending on the infrared camera that you have. And this goes with infrared film as well. There's different levels of it, how it renders the colors. But yeah, so when you are shooting with infrared, when it was film or now it's digital, it's going to render these colors in these interesting ways. So if you notice, a lot of the pinks are coming from foliage, and that's how it's reflecting light into the camera. It's seeing that color spectrum that way.
And I'm also, the way infrared works, actually I'm flipping the channel so the skies are blue, this blue-green color, and the trees are really like almost like pom-poms of peachy
Right.
coral colors.
Right.
Just want to talk for a moment about some influences for the project. This very much responds to dystopian literature like George Orwell's 1984, but I need to say that Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, but most specifically, I binge watched the Hulu production of Handmaid's Tale, and the art direction of just minimizing the dark world of Gilead and maroons and this teal gray and just a gray really influenced me in sort of how I sort of felt about the project. It felt so accurate. Also, when I look at these images, I always just feel like it appears normal, but not normal. Maybe go to the next slide. Where are we now? Okay. Yeah, I had mentioned before that rock and roll musicians like Frank Zappa and Jimi Hendrix use analog photography, analog infrared for their album covers, in particular experimenting with light and what would be called psychedelic colors. That's very much evident, I hope, in these images as well. And while destruction was happening in various ways, you know, COVID-19 destroying lives and taking apart communities, some good things did happen. I saw these trees for the very first time. There's a lot of construction and demolition going on around my neighborhood, but I never saw this view before, and I found that something new and something sort of comforting. Again, more of the construction and demolition going on in my neighborhood. And I want to point out, while these images seem seemingly familiar, these urban landscapes are sort of outside our global consciousness of what we think about Los Angeles. It's like we recognize it, but we don't. And that's sort of where this unreal but real landscapes comes in. And I do want to, this, you know, photography allows us to consider things in a much deeper way. And this camera really allowed me to see nature was ever present and thriving. Maybe go to the next slide.
Yeah.
And, you know, at times when just depression and despair seem all too prevalent during my long walks, I would come home and sort of be really curious to look at these images and find some comfort. The project really allowed me to consider what the natural world looked like in an urban environment in a completely different way. And what I really discovered by the end of this is that nature is really showing off, and we don't often see it.
I completely agree with you on that. And when everything started to lock down here in Los Angeles, when I take my walks outside with nobody around, Old Town Pasadena being a complete ghost town, which it normally is not, I felt very like in a very unworldly dystopian kind of place. It's very familiar yet very, very different because there's just no people around. And I love how you were able to visually illustrate that. Even though I don't live in your neighborhood, I'm familiar with this area, but it's at the same feeling of this otherness that's happening globally right now with this pandemic. So I do appreciate your interpretation and visually illustrating that through your infrared camera. I got some comments here. Well said, nature is often showing itself, yet we often don't see it. Thank you, Rick. And Ian Wright, great series. Aline Smithson, fantastic, Karen, so thoughtfully articulated. Thanks, Aline. Barbara, bravo, Karen. I'd love to escape to that unreal landscape. I think we would all like to escape for that. Well, some of us can do it with liquid, as I'm trying to do that as well, but we all do what we can. I'd like to open this up for the last couple minutes for any kind of last minute questions here. If you want to see more of Karen's work, please go to her website displayed here. And again, this recording, this is going to be recorded, and you guys can also review this presentation on our YouTube page. Bravo, Karen. Let's see. if what to get into infrared, what would you suggest?
Oh, well, most people usually shoot what's called standard infrared, where that might be a place to start. I am all about color, so
Okay.
I really like having a color and enhance. There's two great sources. Life Pixel does infrared conversions, and there's also Colora. I encourage you to go to both of those websites and learn.
So basically, did you get a camera and have Life Pixel convert it to infrared, or how did you end up getting your camera?
I actually have 3 or 4 infrared cameras, and most of everything's been done by Life Pixel.
Okay.
And I have a standard and a super color and a full spectrum.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for introducing this audience who may be turned on now to infrared photography. More comments here. Derek, the infrared effect gives it an appropriately post-apocalyptic feel in this era of the pandemic. I could totally agree with you there, Derek. And Debbie, Karen, wonderful presentation and project. And Diana, fabulous presentation, so creative. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for being a part of this. Any last words for us?
No, just thank everybody for their support. Really meant a lot. And thank you for so many friends staying up late back east.
Yes. Thank you all for doing that. This concludes our presentation this evening. I want to thank all of you for staying up, and for those of you logging in from the East Coast, wherever it is you are logging in from, thank you again. Thank you to all the presenters for participating in this event. And one more word, if you believe in these types of programs, and if you want to help support emerging photographers, help them by providing a platform for them to share and showcase their work to the public and have an open dialogue, please, I encourage you to go to PasadenaPhotographyArts.org and make a donation. So until next time, we have forum next month. Please check back with us on our website, get on our mailing list. I want to thank you all again. Have a wonderful evening. Have a good night. Thank you.